Hi everyone, it's Melissa, and today I am going to do a bit of a catch-up because it's been, I don't even know how long, several weeks since I've made a video. I'm really struggling to find time for BookTube. My schedule is just being a little bit difficult right now. So I'm still reading, so I thought I would talk about the books I have been reading. I haven't been reading a lot because aforementioned schedule has also got in the way of reading a lot of books, but I have been reading. So I thought I would do a little bit of a catch-up just talking about some of the books I've read recently. I'm not going to do really long reviews because when I'm so far removed from when I read the book, I start to forget things. So I'll just give some brief reviews of some of the books that I've read during the last couple of months, and I'll also talk a bit about some rough reading plans I have over the next little bit. So I'm gonna have to go back to July because I never updated on July, but I did read my last of Jane Austen's main 6 novels. I read my very last one for this past Jane Austen July, and that was Mansfield Park. I enjoyed Mansfield Park. It wasn't my favorite, but it was also not my least favorite. I would put it probably somewhere in the middle if I was to rank my enjoyment of Jane Austen's novels. This one follows a young woman named Fanny Price who goes to live with relatives, with an aunt and uncle and cousins. Her family does this in order to give her some better opportunity, and there is kind of a bit of a meddling aunt involved who persuades her brother-in-law, her uncle, to take Fanny in, and how great it will be to have her there. And yeah, like I said, I'd put this probably somewhere in the middle. It's not as funny as, say, like Pride and Prejudice, but I thought there were funny moments to this. I thought there were quite a few good characters. It was refreshing to see a character who was a bit more reserved, who maybe didn't like speak her mind. I think that's probably why a lot of people don't talk about Fanny Price as much, but we can't all be Lizzie Bennet's and Emma Woodhouse's, right? So that was kind of refreshing. So yeah, I enjoyed Mansfield Park. I would read it again. It wasn't my all-time favorite, but I liked it better than some of her other novels. So that was a successful Jane Austen July for me. Then I read The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. I've been meaning to read this for ages. I read 2 other Ishiguro books and I loved both of them. I have read Never Let Me Go, and what's the one with the robot? I can't remember what it's called. Clara and the Sun. And this is a completely different vibe, and I knew that going into it. I enjoyed this as well for very different reasons than I enjoyed the other books. It still tackles some of the same themes. Ishiguro obviously has a lot of thoughts about the same topics. This is about a butler who is, I don't know how old he would be, like middle-aged maybe? He's starting to get up there in years. Maybe he's more like 60 or something like that. I don't know if his age is ever mentioned, but it is relevant because he's looking back over his life as a butler at this particular estate, which I can't remember the name of. It doesn't really matter. The point being, things have changed greatly since his heyday, I suppose, as a butler back during the war when he was a butler for a very important, distinguished gentleman, and there were a lot of very important people at the house. And he reminisces about those times as he's going on this road trip to go see another person who was a housemaid at the house, who he received a letter from. So he's going to visit her. So you're getting these little glimpses of the road trip and people he's talking to along the way, things that he's seeing that he's never really seen before because he's never really ventured out of his small little bubble of a world. And so you're getting glimpses of this road trip, and as he's seeing things, it's reminding him of certain events in his past, and he reminisces about them, and then that's how you get to know his character and what's shaped his life and why he is the way he is. So this is very much a hugely character-driven story. This book is very much about reminiscence and looking back at one's life, thinking about potential regret, thinking about things that you're like proud of. But we always get this filtered view of what he's really feeling. Very stereotypical butler, reserved, not really giving much away. And I think that could put some people off, that kind of description. I have a real problem with characters who are kept at arm's length. Like if I feel distanced from a character, I have a really hard time with those types of books. But I would say it works here because I didn't ever feel distance from the character. I felt very drawn into the character, but you could tell that the character had a wall up. But it didn't feel like the author was leaving you at an arm's length. It felt, I don't know, more organic, I guess. I don't really know how else to describe it, but if you have that same kind of problem, I would say that it's not necessarily an issue with this book, the fact that he's that type of character. You still feel, or at least I still felt very drawn into that character. So I didn't love this as much as the other two Ishiguros I read. They're much more like science fiction, dystopian, like that kind of vibe. And I just often get a kick out of those types of books. But that being said, I still really, really enjoyed this and would recommend it. The other books I finished, I don't have a whole lot to say about them because it's hard to talk about them. And I'll tell you why. So the other book I just finished is Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb. I don't really want to say much about this because it's the second in a trilogy. This is the Farseer trilogy. And it's about a young boy, now turned young man in this book, who is basically a royal bastard. He is one of the prince's illegitimate sons, and he's taken into the keep, into the castle to live and be raised, but he's not really a part of the family. And these books are full of like political, you know, vying for the throne, backstabbing type of stuff. They are very like classic fantasy to me. What I like most about these books is the setting. The Six Duchies, which is the like kingdom that this is centered around, feels very real and very lived in. And I also really enjoy the characters. A lot of the secondary characters I find really, really interesting. So yeah, these have been very solid fantasy reads for me, but I can't really say much else about the second book in the series. The only other book I have finished, if memory serves me, is The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. This is a reread. I read this a very long time ago, and so I didn't remember it super well. I just remember Huckleberry Finn and Jim, the escaped slave, going on a raft down the Mississippi. I didn't really remember a lot of the details around this. I recently read Tom Sawyer for the first time and enjoyed it. I like Huckleberry Finn. I definitely think Tom Sawyer is a better book, or at least I enjoyed it more. Huckleberry Finn as a character is very interesting. I think Tom Sawyer's the better character, so maybe that's why I liked that book more. Another thing leading me not to enjoy this book as much is like the slurs are just so out of control. The stories are fun. It's like part adventure. There's some serious stuff happening, but it's all through the lens of Huck Finn, who's like, I think maybe like 12 or 13. And so there's this layer of ignorance. Although, I mean, he understands that Jim has escaped slavery and that is illegal, and Huck has these like mixed emotions because he likes Jim, but he feels like he's doing a bad thing by not reporting this runaway slave. Mark Twain is saying all sorts of things about slavery. This is very clearly an anti-slavery book, but it is weird reading it through a modern lens because there's still kind of like a caricature or like stereotype surrounding Black people in it. And yeah, so that's kind of, it feels kind of weird in that way. But getting back to the slurs, the N-word is in this book a ton. It also makes an appearance in Tom Sawyer. It's in certain scenes in Tom Sawyer where they mention that word. It's sprinkled in a few times and then it kind of isn't mentioned again until however many chapters. So while it's very uncomfortable, it isn't the entire book. Whereas in Huck Finn, it's basically the whole book. There are very few chapters or pages where it's not mentioned or not written. It is, I mean, there are some pages where it doesn't appear, but if you were to do an average over the entire book, because there are passages where it's said so many times in a row, and it is pretty consistent frequency throughout the book, I would say that if you were to average it, it is multiple times per page. It's a lot. I mean, I try to read things thinking about the time in which they were written. Sometimes that's hard to do. So I think you have to kind of go in like fully aware like what you're getting into. I didn't hate the book. I enjoyed it well enough the first time I read it. I gave it, I think, 3 stars. I think I gave it the same this time. There were funny bits, some heartfelt bits, but it is really hard to get past the language. And like I said, I enjoyed Tom Sawyer more. I reread this mostly because I really would like to read James by Percival Everett. And while I understand you don't need to have read Huckleberry Finn to read that book, I just think that I would get more enjoyment out of any references or nods that Percival Everett may have put in James. So I chose to reread it to have it a bit fresher in my mind so that if there are any allusions to that book, I will get them. So that's going to be read hopefully this year. I'm not sure if my library has a copy, so we'll see what happens there. I think those are all the books I've read. I did read some BookTube prize stuff, but I will talk about that in my video for the BookTube prize books. I am currently reading a book on audio and a book in print. On audio, I am rereading All Quiet on the Western Front, which I guess I'll talk about when I finished it. I'm almost done, but I want to collect some thoughts about that one. I mean, I loved it the first time I read it, which was back in high school. I don't know, maybe it's because I've matured, but I'm getting like a lot more out of it as an adult. The other thing I've just started, the book's downstairs, so I just have the dust jacket, is The Trouble with Mrs. Montgomery Hurst by Katie Lumsden. Only read 1 chapter, but I enjoyed the first chapter. Because I'm finishing up All Quiet on the Western Front, this is a lot more lighthearted, and I really need that. So hopefully this will be a nice change of pace. I feel like I've been talking enough. I said I was going to share some rough reading plans. I don't really have anything super set in stone. I don't make TBRs anymore, so I don't even have really a TBR to share. But because we are coming up in October, my favorite month of the year, and we're getting into spooky season, which is like my favorite reading season of all, I'm starting to think about all the books I want to read, and I'm not going to have time for all of them. But one book that I'm hoping my hold comes in at the library is for Moon of the Turning Leaves by Waubgeshig Rice. I read the first book, which was called Moon of the Crusting Snow, I think is the name of the book. It's like an apocalyptic book set on this northern indigenous community, and it was so tense and atmospheric, and I really enjoyed it. And yeah, so I've just been waiting to get my hands on this book, and obviously this is the perfect season to read Moon of the Turning Leaves. So hopefully that will come in October. Another one I've had on my writer for a long time and just haven't gotten around to is this horror book, John Dies at the End, by, this is David Wong. He used to write under the pseudonym, but it's Jason Pargin. This, I don't know anything about. It was just, I really want to read this author. And so I just want to read it, not knowing anything besides presumably that John dies at the end. So yeah, there are lots of other books that hopefully I will get to for spooky season, but those are all of the things that come to mind right now. I think I've talked long enough. I think I'm just excited to be talking to you again because, as I said, it's been so long since I've had the opportunity to make a video. So hopefully you were able to put up with my rambling this video, and I will try to be more concise next time. So that's all for now. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll chat soon. Take care. Bye.